Some changes are coming to the live room. I've identified a few areas that I want to improve. I've done a ton of testing. I have moved these panels all over the place. I've taken out, I've clustered them, I've stacked absorbers in spots, and I finally figured out how I want to go about improving the sound in here. First panel is a half diffuser, half absorber. It's going to be about 8 feet tall. That's going to go right there directly in the middle of this wall, opposite of where I record drums. Here's the outer frame. I picked up these really cool Carson wood clamps that make it so easy to put something like this together. Frame is put together and the rails to hold the diffusers are installed. They fit really nicely. I just need to screw them in, but I wanted to test them first. Here's the frame with the diffusers installed on the wall. This panel is done, and I ended up going with 3-inch thick Roxol for the top and bottom absorber panels. I think it came out really well.
Baby, I don't need the stress. You can miss me with your test. You forgot you had the best. Baby, you just say less. Yeah, I got my own pro, man. You ain't in control. Think it's all about you. You get in your bad mood, yeah. I know what to do, yeah. It's really time to go. You
See, there's always something. There's always something. And now I can see audio going out.
Yeah.
That was all a test to see who was paying attention. So whoever saw that passed. I imagine David's on the other end seeing the Zoom link. He's like face planted, like, really?
Hey, we were just all testing if you were paying attention.
Okay, then I'm not going to waste a lot of time saying all that again. There are a couple little updates. There's going to be a few new videos coming out on some updates that are happening to the live room. Some acoustic changes in there. I already put one short out, and I have enough video to do a little bit longer form video. Won't be crazy long, but I still have a couple things to finish. So as I get that stuff done, I will be posting some of those videos. There will be another short coming this week on step 2, though. The other thing is later. Wait, what month is this? We're still in July, right?
Yes, still.
Okay, so in August, that's the next month coming. I'm still flummoxed from the not turning the audio on. We're going to do another console side chat where we do some recording again. We're going to have a new list of mics that will go up. The old list is still up, so don't go vote because I'm going to pull all that down tonight. We're going to put up a new list of mics to choose from each of the instruments. I'm going to get another guest or two to come in and record with this, and we're going to have another round of recording little ditty live with the mics that you guys want to hear that we have. And then at some point, I will start looking at new microphones to get in here.
Yep.
Alex, it's July, but 2022. Do you remember back in the early days of the pandemic when we used to have all those fun feedback loops?
Oh, yeah.
I was really testing new instruments. It wasn't that I didn't know how to hook up all this stuff. It was instrument testing.
Yep.
Okay, so let's get to the main event here. I've gotten to know David Vignola from Home Recording Made Easy over the past couple months. Dude has a ton of great content. He's got a great studio. And I'm really excited to have him. Let me unmute him, and we're just going to pull him in. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, that's the wrong camera. There we are. David, how you doing, boss?
Hey, boys. I thought I screwed up your stream. I thought I screwed up the audio. That sounds like just like one of my live streams.
I got all excited and started going, and there's no audio coming out.
Been there, done that.
Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. A lot of fun.
Like I said a second ago, you and I have already had, 2 or 3 conversations that all easily go an hour, hour and a half. And
Yeah.
I really wish every one of them I would have videoed or recorded at least, because there's so many topics and so many good conversations. Hopefully, and I don't think we're going to have a problem because both you and I like to talk. So I hopefully we can go over some of that stuff again, on the
Sure.
live stream with everyone else, because you have a wealth of information. You've got
Yeah,
both your
yeah.
YouTube channels are great. And
Thank you.
Actually, why don't you just quickly give us tell everybody about yourself a little bit.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, again, thanks for having me, man. I love this stuff. When you want to start talking about gear and stuff, you'll never shut me up. But anyway, my name is Dave, and I have a couple of YouTube channels. Home Recording Made Easy, which is where most people know me from. I've been doing that for 10 years, and that's basically what the tin says. It's home recording made easy, although a lot of stuff in the most recent years have been focused more on mixing and mastering, but there's some recording stuff as well. And I have a whole online school of training, homerecordingmadeeasy.com. And so that YouTube channel's been around about 11 years. And, I just, specialize in teaching really beginners and intermediates how to get their studios up and running, how to mix and master using all kinds of plugins from different manufacturers, and just like the basics, getting people that, don't know a whole lot about digital recording or old school, came from the old analog world and want to start making some music at home. And that's basically where Home Recording Made Easy is all about. And then I also have a mixing membership website called mixingmadeeasy.net, which is, again, basically what the tin says. Every month we mix a new song together, and there's mixing competitions and all of that. And so that's just dedicated to mixing, and all of this is all in the box. It's not the analog stuff, which I know we'll get into. And then lastly, for some stupid reason, I decided I don't have enough to do. So, hey, I know what we'll do. Let's start another YouTube channel, and let's go out and buy a bunch of equipment because, I'm a glutton for punishment. And we started Mixing Music Analog. which is exactly what it says. It's hybrid mixing, but it's mostly analog, and it's consoles and hardware and those kinds of things. So those are the three things that I do. And it keeps me busy for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, just putting any of these videos together, it seems like they come together easy, but there's an immense amount of hours and work that goes into doing all this stuff. It's
well, you
insane.
guys know. I mean, like I said, off camera, and I'll say it here publicly, I mean, I've watched you guys for a long time, in the songs from the studio series, man. I love that stuff, and I feel your pain, because I know what it takes to put those kinds of productions together, and I don't know how the two of you guys do it. I mean, I know you guys are pretty much a two-man crew, and to have to write songs, record songs, videotape. I mean, and you do all your own video editing, you do everything, right? So I mean, it's like me, but at a higher level, and it's crazy. A lot of work.
Yeah. In the last couple for the year, I'm not going to play. I'm just going to focus on being engineer producer, and I'm going to bring someone else in.
Yeah. If you can do it, I would highly recommend it.
Yeah. So speaking of hybrid, let's just pick a spot and start going. You relatively recently, put a console in, and you also have a nice rack over there, if I do say so myself.
You're embarrassing me. Thank you.
with some great gear. So, why did you decide to add the console to your mix workflow?
Well, really, it really started because, like I said, Home Recording Made Easy's been around about 11 years. And even though, I look young and pretty, I'm not, I'm an older guy, and I'm starting to get up there, and but I still got about 10 or 15 more years of working. And honestly, what really happened, to be totally honest, is I started to get bored. It's like I've been teaching the same thing over and over and over again. I have 900 videos on YouTube, and how many more videos am I going to do about how to EQ a snare drum before I say I need to do something else? And so I love Home Recording Made Easy, and it's where my whole business and brand is built from, and I never plan to get rid of it, but I wanted to do something more. And I said, I want to reach a different group of people, but still in the audio space. And then, couple that with, I've been working in the box and plugins for all these years, and I love it. And I says, last time I was in an analog studio was probably in the early 90s. And I've always wanted to know, what's the hype around a console and the analog gear and all of that stuff. And I says, maybe I'll add a couple of pieces of hardware, and we'll do that at Home Recording Made Easy. And I did that, got an interface, patched in some hardware, a little bit of hybrid. And what I found very quickly was that audience had no interest in anything. As soon as I bought a piece of gear, the video views went right down. Nobody at Home Recording Made Easy wanted to watch me hook up $3,000 compressors. It's the wrong audience. And so I said, maybe if I want to reach a different group of people, maybe I should start another YouTube channel. If I want to go into the education of hybrid and analog and kind of do both simultaneously, in the box on one channel, analog on another.
I loved how you did that too, because you really, with the analog side of things, you showed it from the ground up. And that's one thing that anyone that really wants to get heavy into any of this stuff needs to kind of know is it's a pain in the ass to initially get going.
That's the understatement of the century. So
but
when
you
I started
chose to film it all.
Oh yeah. And when I decided that maybe I'll start another channel, then I started to say, well, what is that going to be, right? So I think he's in our chat here tonight. My buddy and kind of friend, and one of my students actually, David SJ. He's the guy you see on camera with me at Mixing Music Analog. I called him up and I said, Dave, I got this idea. And he says, it might be a good idea, but I says, if I'm going to go do another channel, I'm just not going to do, we're just going to get another computer and hook up some hardware. I'm going all the way down the rabbit hole. What if I bought a console? What if I bought all hardware and we just filmed everything? And he, like everybody else, says, you got to be out of your mind. But after about an hour of talking with him, he says, you know what? He goes, I think you got something here. There's nobody doing this. And he said, if you want to make that kind of investment, I said, dude, I want to know what it's like. I want to be able to get on camera and tell people I have both rigs. I mix in the box of plugins and have pretty good success with it over the last 10 years. And I get paid all the time by clients to mix music. I kind of know what I'm doing. I want to have both rigs in the room so we can compare them. Not that one's better than the other, but I want to be able to teach people the differences. And so that was kind of the germ. And then I said, okay, we went out and spent all this money. And then I said, well, how do you set all this stuff up? So I started looking, because I didn't have the money to pay someone to come do that. And then quite honestly, probably like both of you guys, I'm like a gear geek. And I'm like, I want to do it myself. I don't want to just pay someone to install it for me. I mean, I guess you could do that, but so then I got my buddy Dave, and he said, hey, can I come down and help? And I said, sure, I'd be grateful if he came down and helped. And between the two of us, the console showed up, and we said, we got the manual out, and we said, let's just turn on the cameras. There's no fancy editing. There's no high production value. It is literally a camera in the corner of the room with a shotgun mic, and you hear the air conditioner and the wind noise. I didn't even put lavalier mics on. We're like using an iPhone and a shotgun mic, and we said, we're going to film everything from the time it comes off the truck, dragging it into my studio, all the way up to the time we're passing audio and everything in between. And I thought nobody would watch it because it doesn't look like your typical, all the other people that do these kinds of videos are much more slick and great editing and all that stuff. And we have none of that, man. It's just, you see us behind the console with an iPhone going, hey, look, this is how I labeled the inputs because the console didn't come labeled. I mean, we went down to that level of minutia,
Yeah, you told me about that. That shocked me, actually.
Yeah, it didn't come labeled. And so we did all of that. And I just said, let's just film it. Because I said, part of the problem is there's no information online to show you how to do it. Because I wanted to know, well, you couldn't even find a picture of the front of the console to tell me what kind of connectors were on them. I couldn't even find a diagram at that time. So I said, what if we put together kind of like a user manual? Like if you're into hybrid, or if you think you're going to buy, whether it's a big standalone console or a desktop model, the concepts are all the same. Here's how you install it.
Right.
Here's how you do the IO. Here's how you do the cable. I mean, all of that. And we learned literally on film, and all the mistakes, all the stupid decisions, all of it is there, and none of it's been edited. And so,
awesome.
Yeah, that's what we decided to do. And some people really like it and other people not so much, but we had fun.
But the thing is, you're right. The basics of any of these consoles is relatively similar. That you have input, mic input, you've got a direct out, you have a mic insert, you have a line input, you have a monitor input, and then maybe there's some extras. But the majority of it is all inside of those like 4 or 5 rows of things. So if you can kind of understand one, you can have a basis to start with any of them. Where it gets tricky is once you start getting the patch bay involved and start dealing with routing. Yeah. But I think, personally, because we did the same thing minus the filming in the beginning. I mean, it was 3 weeks of hooking up the initial patch bays, and our friend Scott Francisco came over, who's an amazing engineer, and I've worked with him. I used to do the Full On Drums channel with him, and he was telling us all these things to do that I have no clue. The tie line's going on. He goes, you're going to want this, you're going to want this. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And we'd be soldering and crimping the Elcos, and I remember the first snake that we did, he came over and he grabbed it and goes, let me check it, and he just starts pulling the pins off.
Oh, Lord.
And he gets done, he goes, do it again.
Yeah.
We didn't have them crimped enough. So it's like we literally learned from that very first crimp how hard it was to do that. But I will say the payoff of having gone through that, and tell me if you're similar here, because you might have a different view on it, is as you go through, and I messed it up 3 revisions before I finally got it completely right. I think it was revision 4 of wiring the patch bay. But knowing all of that has helped me immensely as the studio has grown. It's helped me in figuring out different ways to work as we added the video and all the things where we have to literally throw audio to every room. If I didn't have an understanding of how that stuff went together and worked, it would make it a lot harder for me to understand actually how to use it.
Oh, yeah,
not
no
that
doubt
you have
about
to
it.
wire a patch bay to use one, but
but it helps. It
Yeah.
helps, and you're right. It really, and I'm glad, and I went into it with that. I wanted to have the knowledge because I wanted to be able, as things grown, I didn't want to have to hire someone to teach me how to hook something up. I mean, and as an audio engineer, I mean, it's just like, to me, it's no different than when I would teach people in the box how to use analog style plugins. I have a whole course on that. And so learning how to use the plugin effectively, understanding how the knobs work, and understanding your tools is going to make you better at what you do. And so that I went into it with that approach. Is I wanted to learn this. I didn't want someone to come do it. And yeah, we went through a lot of pain. It took us about 2 months to commission the console. 2 months. I mean, and that wasn't working on it every day, but that was 5-6 weekends in a row where my buddy Dave would come up, and we'd spend 2 days just putting in the first patch. We didn't even have, well, we were so stupid, we didn't even buy a patch bay I mean, that's how dumb. I mean, it really is almost embarrassing. But when we went to do the patch bay, we hooked it all up and we, put the audio through, and there's no sound. And we spent 3 hours going, how come there's no sound? I mean, but we figured it out. And now as it's grown and as we brought more gear in and now we have more patch bays, it's become much easier. And now when there is a problem, because there will be, I know exactly the ins and outs of all this stuff, and I can figure out and hunt down the problem pretty quickly now.
Troubleshooting is always a huge part after you get it hooked up. Yeah. You can't just assume that everything is completely right, especially if you're making your own cables. Like I think we've made everything that we have behind there, crimping the whole 9 yards, and there's bound to be a pushed pin or a bad solder or something. You have to go through and test it. And if you don't understand the flow of everything, it's really hard to troubleshoot where there's a problem.
Absolutely.
Or when you start if you have a ground hum somewhere, figuring out why that's causing it, it's...
Yep. Yeah, I think I tell everyone, if you should really understand the inner workings of how things go together, even if it's as simple as I just have a computer with my audio interface and I want to add a master bus compressor. Learning how all that works is gonna make you better at what you do. And so and we did is we just rolled the camera while we were doing it. That's the only thing that we did. And I didn't edit, I didn't take anything out. Nothing. I mean, everything is there. I mean, there's lots of those videos where things didn't work, and I would speed up the video because it wouldn't work for 2 hours. So I'd have to speed up the videos, but people would see us just sitting in front of the screen looking at it like two idiots going, and then we find out it was one stupid button we didn't push on the console. I mean, some of the stuff is actually quite funny. We couldn't figure out. I think we ran a guitar through and we went to pan and the panning wasn't working. And we're going, what do you mean the console doesn't pan? That doesn't make any sense.
We call that who buys this shit moments.
Yeah.
When you're hooking that up and you're like, it's not working. Who buys this shit? Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, wait, it was me. My mistake.
That's exactly what happened. And I don't know, one of us hit a button and we went, oh, there's the panning. And then we're like, don't hit that button if you want it to pan. You know what I mean? I don't know what we were doing, probably doing something in mono and didn't even realize it. But I mean, and you're going, and and I know people who would be looking at those videos going, these dudes are audio engineers, I mean,
I think there's an important lesson in all that. It's like even Studio Dude just said, you just got to jump in and learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. And one thing that I find we were talking about this a little bit during sound check, was a lot of the videos that we see on YouTube, and I've even been guilty of this in the past, is you see the end result of all the mistakes and things that happened.
That's right.
And it's important to know that every single one of us started with not knowing a single thing about any of this.
That's
and at
true.
Some point we had to learn it, whether we learned it on camera or we learned it as being assistants or learning about just in your bedroom by yourself, whatever. We all had to learn this stuff. And if you can see someone else going through it and doing all the wrong things and telling you, yes,
don't do that,
this is everything,
right?
You can learn so much quicker from that than just seeing the end result. Because I've been I've had a particular problem before. I've tried to figure it out. I find a video that talks about the problem, and here they fix it, but they didn't tell you all the part to fix it. So it's like, great. Now I got to go try to figure that part of it out,
Right. They tell you the what, but they don't tell you the why or the how. And to me, that's so important. So yeah, you're right. We all started without knowing. And some of the stuff that seems so simple, when you get into all this gear and the more of it, the more cabling, it gets very complex very quickly. And so if you don't keep it all straight in your head, you could just make a stupid mistake and you can spend 3 hours chasing around something that should have been avoided. But, again, I don't regret any of it, and it's been a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun making those videos. And then we even did a wrap up kind of at the end, about 3 or 4 months ago, we did a kind of how did we get here was the name of the series. And we went through, I went back and watched all the videos and took a bunch of notes and said, here's why we did this, how we did it. And then, oh, here's what we got right. And it was a short list of what we got right. And then here's what we, here's what we got wrong. And we went through all the things that we got wrong. So if you didn't see the video, I said, and in December of 2021, we did this, and these are the 3 mistakes we made. And oh, I wish I would have knew about that. So if you're looking to buy something, make sure you plan this out, and we went through all of that to try to help people. Because I wish I would have saved myself not only probably 8 weeks, but an enormous amount of wasted money on this project if I would have known up front the things that I know now. We were talking just about cabling. The amount of money I wasted on cables and bought 3 times is actually, it actually sometimes it frustrates me to think about that I spent that much money 3 times because I didn't do it right, because I didn't know and I didn't take the time up front. So it's those kinds of things that hopefully helps other people, you know.
And wiring a console is no joke. I mean, the amount of cabling you need is absolutely insane.
Well, I think I told you I bought it with 4 cables.
Yeah.
I got a cool question here from Ty, the sound guy. How do you all both handle syncing in the box and output gear to mix down in real time?
I was actually that was going to be what I wanted to suggest, getting into the how you added the console and then talk a little bit about the hybrid thing, because we're the same thing here. Mm-hmm. You know, so I know when you're talking about syncing, the way I do it is all of my stuff is done outside the box. I mean, I do some things in the box, but I don't use I/O plugins. I don't do any of that stuff. So I hit the converters coming out. I do everything. Anything that's inside the box comes out on pairs of channels that I set aside for just in the box stuff. And then all of my sync, I guess I don't know if that's the word I would technically use, is done outside on the board. Are you the same way, David? Are you using I/O, or are you bringing everything outside?
No, everything comes out. So I don't use any of those pipeline plugins, I/O, and that stuff that I would use prior to a console. So everything in the DAW has to come to the console and then go back in. So whether no matter what it is. So I don't, every channel gets routed out to the console. If the session's too big for the amount of faders, and I comp stuff in the box and bring it out to the console, and then everything goes back in on a print track like you guys do. So I don't really do much inside of the box. There might be a handful of plugins here or there prior to coming to the console, but not really. Usually everything is done in the analog domain, and then it just goes back in.
I set up a set of, because that's a split console too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can do the same thing here. So I'll set up my monitor channels as just pairs of stereo tracks.
Right.
And if I have any in the box stuff that is being mostly done there, maybe there's some panning effects or something, those always get assigned to those channels.
Right.
And then all my main stuff is up on the 32 faders.
Right. So my console has 64 faders, 32 long, 32 short. And so I'll use the short faders for just that. If it's something like, VST pads or strings or something where I don't need to EQ it, I don't need to do anything it already sounds great. I just need to bring it in and out. I'll put those on the short faders and I'll just blend them in. And then all the heavy lifting, all the main tracks are on the 32. So nothing stays behind in the box. It all has to come through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I find that works well because you're only hitting your converters one time coming out and then a print back in. And I print to an apogee. So I come out the Motus and then print to a separate apogee. So it gives me a little bit more to work with. But
yeah, I mean, that's basically how I do it as well. Everything comes out and we come back in on a stereo print, and that's it. I mean, we have the ability to print all the direct channels back in if you wanted to, and if you wanted to mix in the box. And the Origin has some features where you can take out, there's a button called the 0 dB button on every channel that you can take the fader circuit right out of the thing. So you can just use it as a big summing amp, and you can mix with faders in the box if you wanted to.
Yep.
But to me, it was like, well, why am I buying a console if I'm not going to use the faders? I mean, to me, that didn't seem like it made a lot of sense. But I understand it for recall and that kind of stuff, why people would want to do that.
Right. Yeah, there's only some of the pop stuff I've done where there was just so many channels that I would stereo group stuff and kind of use it as a summing mixer.
Yeah.
And it was more of a convenience thing for me. I didn't like working that way as much, because I found myself having some of the same type of struggles I had before I was using the console.
Mm-hmm.
And when I would group more of it out on the board, those problems kind of went away.
Yeah, I don't normally have sessions that large. Usually they're, biggest session normally is around 50 tracks or so, and I could pare down 50 to 32 most time. I mean, I have 64 faders. I try, and even if I had, I wouldn't want to I don't want to manage 64 faders if I don't have to. So if I could group things together, and if we have, if I'm doing a metal track and we have to have 12 sets of heavy rhythm guitars, I'll just blend them in the box and bring it out to a stereo pair, or maybe 2 stereo pairs, or something like that, where I guess you could spread it all out, but that's just more stuff I got to manage. So I really try to keep the mixing in the analog domain as simple as possible and as straightforward as possible.
I do that with my drums too. Like if I have toms that are more than a pair, there's 3 or 4, some of the metal guys that have 6 toms, that all comes out to a stereo channel on the board. So I do a little bit of basic stuff in the box, maybe a little compression EQ there, and then I have it come out to a stereo channel on the board where I have whatever my bus is, I guess you would call it, for the toms.
Yeah.
And that helps. And the same thing with my rooms. If I have more than 1 pair of rooms, which if I'm recording it, there's always at least 3, I'm making decisions on what I'm using at any given time in the song. So I just have a stereo channel for the rooms, and that gets turned on and off in the box. But it's still the faders on the board.
Right. And you just made a really good point. The thing about analog, which some people, if you're so used to in the box and then you start looking at the hybrid or analog and a console and all that, it's making that commitment in that decision. So I don't, in the box, it's great. You can do everything. We can tweak things to death. We can have 400 tracks and 2,000 plugins, and we can bring up the session anytime and tweak everything a half a dB. That's wonderful. But when you work in the analog domain, all of that's got to go away. And that's a good thing, I find. So in other words, if I had 3 pairs of room tracks, well, in the mix, I'm making a commitment of what's coming, what's going. Are we muting 2 of those tracks? We're making a decision. Yeah. And we're living with that decision. I'm not going back 3 months later and going to go, maybe we should have added 3 more dB on that 3rd pair of room tracks. Well, maybe. But I'm not doing that. I mean, is that going to make the difference between a good song and a bad song? No. And is that going to make a difference between someone who buys the record or doesn't buy the record? No. So I think, and I myself included, I got spoiled all those years in the box, having all those options. And so we really tried to make this setup so it was simple and there were limited options,
Yeah. I find your creativity tends to be a little higher when you don't have as many options, because you really have to think about it,
And it's faster.
And making a decision is a huge. That's a T-shirt, make a damn decision. That's with a fader on it.
Totally.
And it's fast. It's so much faster because you don't have to choose which of the 35 compressor plugins do I want to use on this one. I only have 2, so we're picking A or B. And most of the time, I mean, again, and people think, well, that's most of the time, it almost doesn't matter. The way analog works, whether I put an 1176 on a bass or an LA2A on a bass, they both sound a little different. But if the bass is recorded well, and most importantly, performed well, I can use either one of those. And nobody is going to be able to listen to that and go, that bass track doesn't sound good because you didn't use that right compressor. It's all, a lot of that is sales, marketing, and nonsense. Yes, they're all different little flavors of ice cream, and you may prefer one over the other. But I don't even get that far in the weeds. You know what I mean? I just go, we need a compressor on this. What do we got in the rack?
You can only notice if you're listening in solo.
That's right.
You go through them and you listen to solo, something sounds good, but without any context, none of that stuff, in my opinion, none of that stuff matters.
Right. So the limited choices are great, and it makes mixing much faster, at least for me. I mean, I was amazed at how once I got my muscle memory down and started knowing where things were, it was how quickly I can mix a 40-track song, and have it sounding great in an hour. It didn't take 3 hours of prep work in the box to get the right tape emulation plugins to sound right. You don't need any of that. And so,
there's that chaos of analog. I mean, even both you and I have newer consoles, but it's still going through a channel that has tons of solder joints and all sorts of things. And I've got transformers on my inputs and all that. So you get some of that, those tiny inconsistencies that give things space. And that to me was a huge thing when I when I put the first console in, which was a Toft, way before the Tridents.
Yeah.
The first thing I noticed as I brought it out is my left to right was different, and my front to back was already different, and I hadn't put a reverb or tried to EQ something or done anything. I just noticed this sense of space that I had, where in the box I would spend a lot more time. And I think I remember seeing Joe Barisi even talk about that once in one of his mix videos, going the amount of things that he would have to do on a channel in the box with plugins to try to recreate just that sense of space that he had when he brings it up on his SSL. It was like 5 times the amount of stuff on there.
Yeah, it's true, and we realized that very quickly. One of our early install videos, we were just making sure we plugged all the cables in right, which by the way didn't happen the first time, but by the second or third time, we were trying to pass audio just to make sure it would work, and we were using a track that I have mixed in the box because on YouTube videos and stuff, I mean, dozens and dozens of times. So I know the song very, very well, and I know what it sounds like when it's mixed right in the box and when it's just raw. And we put the audio through the board. It's just a 16 tracks, the first 16 tracks. And my buddy Dave, he just pushed the faders up so we could hear the sound coming out of the speakers. And he did a 3-minute balance, panned a couple of things. We didn't touch the EQ. We didn't even turn on the SSL bus compressor in the board because we didn't think to do that at first. And we had no hardware hooked up to this thing. And I remember we were standing there and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, it almost sounds finished. And he looked at me and said, dude, why does that sound so good? Is it just, and then I started to instantly think, okay, well, we just spent, like an ungodly amount of money on all this shit. Is it really sound that different? Or are we trying to convince ourselves, look at all this great stuff, it's got to sound good. And we were really, really careful, and have been this whole time on our channel, to make sure that we're being unbiased and we're not just trying to convince ourselves. Are we really hearing something that's different? But I remember him pushing that up and going, wait a minute, man, this sounds almost done. And we haven't even done anything yet. And that's what was my first inkling of, this is where analog is different than digital. And I always say it on my channel, I never say the word better, even if I believe it's better, because it's subjective, right? I say it's different.
Yep.
And here's why it's different. And the very first thing we noticed was the width and the depth. That were the first two things we said, wow, this sounds way different than when you were mixing this with plugins. And we did this in 5 minutes. And so it was that kind of thing that through this whole journey, we've come to learn more and more what the real differences are, in my opinion, between analog and digital. Is the depth, the 3D depth of of when you run audio through analog hardware. It has a sense of depth that plugins seem more linear to me, and analog seems more 3-dimensional to me. And it's just, so we started to hear that very early on, and I was like, whoa, this is really different. And then we try to, now in all our videos, we try to convey, when we're comparing a hardware compressor to a plugin, or we really try to convey what those sound differences are, if you want to know what the difference really is. It's not that, one is way better than the other. It's what do you like? But here's the difference, Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one thing I wanted to add, right? When you guys were talking about, the sounds you get, the decisions you have to make. We cannot forget that 30, 40 years ago, they maybe had one accent or maybe 2 accents on the console, and they were pretty much using the same plate reverb for everything, just in less amounts.
That's right.
Right, yeah. And
now he's just like, oh, I'm going to use the Bricasti here, I'm going to use the Lexicon here. It's like, back then it was just a plate, and that was it,
Yeah. And
that's
so much great music was that made.
Yeah.
I do feel like it in some cases, production and music, the importance gets flipped, to where some music is made obviously for the production.
Yeah.
Or maybe the arrangement wasn't quite there, the song wasn't there, so they added so much more production things to it to try to make it interesting.
Yeah, totally.
But, he and I were, on that note, we were talking about with the Love Unselfishly mix, I used 2 reverbs on that whole thing. And one of them was a pair of $60 reverbs.
Yeah.
That was on the vocal. But all of the instrumentation went to one, the vocal, and the keyboard solo went to another, and that was the only depth. And that kind of thing can be very freeing. Now, I tried 3 or 4 before I settled on those, but then I left them out. I put it in, it either helped or didn't. I turn it on, turn it off.
Right.
On, off. Okay, just a little bit helps. Good. Next decision. And then those decisions are made and you move on. And it was very freeing and kind of fun to work that way, to be honest with you, without having 50 freaking options. If something didn't work, of course, I go back. But I agree with you on the whole, I mean, I have my preferences. Obviously, you can see behind me what my preferences are. But you're right. There is no better or worse. I think we're at that point with plugins that they are their own thing. I don't think it's ever going to be analog. I don't think it ever needs to be analog. A lot of plugins are inspired by analog, and that is totally fine. Because you could look at all the people making knockoffs of, Neves and 1176 and everything. They're all different flavors of things, right?
Right.
But you notice what you noticed is exactly the same thing that I noticed right away. And when I'm recording, when we're doing tracking sessions, I monitor analog. So the console is split at that point, and I'm using all for me it's a knob, for you it's a mini fader. But that's where my mix comes from. I don't like touching this. I like to leave the mouse away. And every single time when we're at the end of the day, if it's something that I'm not taking to the next step, if it's going to the client for something else, and I have to then put everything out, stereo out, and recreate that balance in that mix, everyone notices, hey, it doesn't quite sound the same. Exactly. It's no longer 18 tracks on the board. It's 2 tracks coming out of the box.
Right.
And it's completely different. So I actually started, when that's the case, I started printing my mix, the rough mix we had that day, to the Apogee rig. So it's that sound that we've been listening to, and then they can take that and have that as a reference and then recreate the mix in the box for them to go do the work. We can tell that width and depth just from the tracking session going back to 2 channels. And it's always a little sad. I got a little tear.
Yeah. No, that's kind of how we do it as well. I print every mix in, and that's what the client gets. They get what's printed. So and then if they want something changed, we'll make a change and reprint it. That's just the way it's done.
Well, I print my rough mixes from the day that way now too.
Yeah, that's what I do too. Yeah.
Hit the 2 track. It's going through all the gear. Print that.
Yeah,
we're good.
Yeah, one thing, David, that you mentioned in your videos, right, and all the analog stuff is which is so true. You said now we mix with our eyes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's so true, and I know because I teach it all the time. When you're looking in you have to mix with your eyes, because as soon as you open up a plugin, it's on the screen and you have to look at it.
Yeah.
And even if you have a DAW controller that does plug-in control, and none of them do it perfectly, because you really can't do it perfectly. It's not the fault of the DAW controller. It's all the plugins are different, all the GUIs are different, all the controls are different from every manufacturer. But you have to look at the screen. And as soon as you look at that screen and you see the needle moving, you start thinking, oh, I'm not compressing enough because the needle's not moving enough. Oh, the needle's moving too hard and we're hitting the red. And you forget to listen. And when you work in analog, even though it's silly, you can't see it, but the screen that we use for the console is a 55-inch TV set, because I'm so blind I can't see it. But what we do is we set a loop, 2 loop points, and we just loop it. And I don't even look at the screen. I don't even look. My head's down. It's never up, because I know it's just going to keep looping around. And you really start to hear things that you didn't hear before, and you have to do more critical listening. And then I noticed that my monitor, the volume in the room comes way down now. I can monitor at a much quieter level because I can hear things that I couldn't hear before. Now, some of that is the gear and the separation, all the things we talked about. But some of that is because I'm not looking at a plugin window, and I'm not trying to fiddle with the mouse and figure out which control does what. And so I can see a light move or a needle move on a GUI. And so now you have to use your ears. And I love the fact, and I didn't realize it at first. Again, these stupid things you learn when you're setting this stuff up. We've moved the locations of our racks probably 4 times, and I kept trying to move them closer to the console so I didn't have to leave the sweet spot to make an adjustment. And where we ended up now farther away from the console than we ever had before, and I love it. I love the fact that I can't look at the gear straight on in front of me. I want it to be to the side. I don't want to see the lights. I don't want to see anything. I want to wheel my chair over there, make the adjustment, come back to the console, bring the insert in and out, and listen. Does it sound better or doesn't it? If it does, great. And I don't care where the knobs are. I don't care how hard the needle's hitting or not hitting. That's all irrelevant, because now you're using your ears, and you lose that in the box. I feel you lose that a lot because you spend so much time dragging and dropping plugins and looking at it, and you have to do it if you're in the box. There's no other way to do it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's shocking how little I look at my meters on any of my outboard gear.
Yeah, I mean,
I've gone through like an entire mix and looked over, and I've seen like 10 lights light up. What?
Right.
I look over and like, what is that on? Holy shit, that's how much. What am I doing? And then I got to stop and look and go, wait a second, are my eyes now telling me that I'm doing too much?
Yeah.
Because for the last hour I've liked it.
Right.
And I just saw that. Now I'm questioning myself. So it's like, okay, don't look at the lights. Even though I love lights.
Yeah, I love lights too, but don't look at don't mix with the light. Stay away from the light. So yeah, there's a big difference. And so now, I've always known that conceptually, but I've really come to realize that the more I work with analog, it's now when I teach back in the box of plugins, I try to convey that. When you get to the end of your mix, shut your monitor off, turn the screen off, don't look at the screen, listen. Does it sound good or doesn't it sound good? And try not to use your eyes as much as you can. But in the box, there's only so much that you can do. But that's huge. It's huge.
I do my final listens, or when I'm at that point, I actually, right off the control room, we have a little lounge, and I have a couch up there, and that's where I I'll turn it up moderately loud, and it's maybe 20 some feet away, and I go sit up there, so I can't see anything. I can't see the board. I can't see a VU. There's no screen. And I just sit up on their couch and have a coffee, and I just listen. And I've learned more about my mixes doing that than I have in here sitting behind the gear.
Right. Because most people that are listening to your mixes are not sitting in front of a console in front of $3,000 sets of monitors in a perfectly controlled, acoustically treated room. Nobody listens to music that way. So you try to get out into the more real world environment.
Yeah.
And my final mix is on a $25 boombox. That's the final listen. And if it sounds balanced there, I know it translates. It doesn't matter what my monitors in the room say. And it's just,
I learned that trick at the old studio. My neighbor used to be a producer engineer named Michael Patterson. Great. He did a ton of Nine Inch Nails stuff. He's mixed The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and a bunch of movies. I mean, his resume is like ridiculous. And he used to just pop his head in every once in a while. And I don't know how he stood me, because I was recording drums half the time, and we shared a wall. And it wasn't exactly, Grandmaster Studios or anything there. Those walls weren't that thick. But he never cared. And every once in a while, I'd just literally see this head pop through the door, and he'd say something for me to try. And then the head would go away.
Right.
Like, what just happened here? And I'd walk out every once in a while, and I'd see him standing in this hallway with his mixes going, and he'd just be staring at the ceiling like this. And I'd watch him. I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, I'm checking my mixes. I'm like, why are you out here doing it? And he explained that whole thing, which is why I go up in the front room now. And I would always see him when he'd get to the end of whoever he was working with. He had 2 spots. He'd come out and he'd listen to entire tunes at 2 different spots in the hallway. And check something, and that's not right. And he'd go in and make a change. He'd walk out in the hallway, and it was just so odd to me at that point in my career. It just, I wasn't smart enough to get it until years later.
Yeah.
Like, it really, that walking away from it and letting all that music come out to you, you really kind of get a sense for what is where in a mix. Even though I just walked into a room that is horrible for acoustics,
Right. And what is it going to sound like in the real world? That's because that's really all that matters in the end.
Yep. All right, let's talk gear for a second.
Sure.
Since we've been on this hybrid thing, I saw someone posted something of many questions or comments back.
Hey, by the way, how's your audio? Your Zoom audio starting to break? Is my audio breaking up on you? Because yours is breaking up.
No, we're good. You hearing us okay?
Yeah, yours is breaking up a little bit, but I can make out what you guys are saying. So go ahead.
Uh-oh. Okay. Tell me if it gets too bad. I saw someone post about they're mainly in the box, and they had just started their hybrid with getting the mix bus. And this is something you and I have briefly talked about. If you're going to recommend to someone starting out in the hybrid world wanting to break outside the box, where would you put your money first?
like you said, on the master bus. So that's the first, I start at the master bus and work our way backwards. Assuming that you got, good monitoring system and all of that. If that's all dialed in and the acoustics in the room and all the stuff that we need to talk about, right? But first piece of gear is something on the master bus, either a good stereo bus compressor EQ or something like, an SSL Fusion or a color box or something on the master bus, because that's where you're going to hear the most audible difference. And that's all your mix is running through that piece of gear or two. So I always say start there and then work your way back to your group channels if you've got buses and those kinds of things. And then lastly, work back to the single tracks if you're going to go down that road. But by the time you get down to the single tracks, that's when you're probably looking at some kind of a mixer of some kind. So everything is hitting analog on the way in. But yeah, always on the master bus. I feel like that's the best bang for your buck, and it's where you're going to hear the most difference and where it's going to affect the most audio, because everything's got to run through it.
Right. Yeah, I even set my board up so when I'm tracking, I can run everything through my mix bus chain. So we hear it there, and every time you pop that thing on and you hear the C1 and the SSL Ultraviolet and the Rupert Neves, instantly the whole thing just goes, whoo, it's way more exciting.
Yes.
And it's just a stereo channel.
That's right.
So yeah, I agree with you. That's usually the best place to start. And I would say the next place after that, if you really wanted to go down that road, minus a console of any sort, would be a good summing mixer that has some aux input ability and stuff on it.
Right. Yeah, if you weren't going to do a mixer, if you weren't going to do like a console or a fader thing, and some kind of really good mix summing amp setup. Yeah, but something more than, like you said, something with some aux abilities as opposed to just an in and an out, which just really hits a couple of transformers and goes out, because you can do that with, something on your master bus already. So you want something, I think, more than just a simple, plug a D sub cable into one end and plug it out the other end. You want to be able to insert stuff on there if you can. But that works too. Anytime you can get the audio through some kind of, electronics of some kind, that's going to help, because it's not just the, like say if you're buying like an SSL Fusion or like a bus compressor or something, it's not just the compressor. Yeah, it compresses audio, but there's way more going on in that compressor than just compressing audio. There's harmonic distortion. There's compression, certainly, but there's a different style of compression going on. There's some EQ. People don't think about compressors like EQs. I do, and I've been teaching it that way in the box for years. They all sound different tonally. And so when I'm looking at a compressor, I'm also thinking about the EQ characteristics more so than the fact that it just compresses, because they all just compress. They all do it differently depending on the technology inside, but I'm really thinking of it as, that's why they call them tone boxes. That's how, because it's an EQ thing for me. So I'll pick a compressor based on what do I want it to do from an EQ point of view, as opposed to just boosting the top end on my EQ. I might pick a compressor that typically sounds brighter on a certain element. So
absolutely,
it's those kinds of thought processes. And I think the same way with plugins. It's not as drastic with plugins, but it's the same kind of thing. It's the same kind of thought process. Mm-hmm. So yeah, anytime you're running audio through any kind of analog circuitry, it's going to impart a sonic characteristic to the audio. Now, like you said, there's 15 million flavors of ice cream and you got to pick the flavors that you want, but it adds that thing. It just does. And the people that say it doesn't, and the plugins and this and that, those are people that either they've never compared them side by side. And it's hard unless you have, and YouTube is hard too, because YouTube does weird things to the audio, as you guys know. So sometimes it's hard, but if you've never stood in the room and listened to the difference between, pick anything, an 1176 hardware compressor versus, and I don't care what manufacturer's plugin you put up against it. There's a lot of great ones out there. I have them all and I've used them all. Until you've listened to them in the room, side by side on the same source material, you don't understand what we're talking about. You haven't experienced that. And you have to experience it to really understand it. It's hard to just watch a YouTube video and listen to some dummy like me tell you that one's better than the other. You really do have to be in the room. It's a different experience altogether.
Yeah. Yep. And they aren't the same. I mean, I have a bunch of the 1176 plugins too, and they are not the same. They don't react the same as the hardware. I mean, even the CLA ones, and I actually like that one.
Yeah,
and use it, but
yeah, we just did a video on that. Dave and I just did I think it might have dropped yesterday, or maybe it's next week. I forget. But we just did a video where we compared the Audioscape 76A, which is their blue stripe, versus the Wave CLA Bluey plugin. And it's not even. And again, like I say this, I use that Chris Lord Algae plugin for years, and it's a great plugin. I love it. I have it. I own it. There's no comparison between those two things. And we said in the video, we were actually surprised on how big of a difference there is. There's no comparison. And so it doesn't mean, again, I'm not saying the hardware is better. I'm saying I like that sound better, but you may like the plugin better. Right. But what I try to do is I'm here to try to tell you what the differences are. And here's what I'm listening for. You know, I'm sure you've seen this in your days. You go around YouTube and you watch guys try to teach people about compressors, right? And here's how much attack, and here's what the ratio should be, and here's what it is, and here's how much you should compress. I love that. Here's how much you should compress. And then, but they never tell you what to listen for, how to focus your ear on it, and what you're listening for. Because the numbers and the ratio and all that is nothing. It's what are you supposed to be listening for, and it's totally dependent on the material coming into it, right? So what we try to do is when I compare something on the channel, I'm trying to say, here's what I'm hearing. Listen for this particular thing and dial your in-ear into that, because that's how you can separate the two. Why does one sound different than the other? But most people don't. Most people, when I see it taught, I don't see it taught that way. I see it taught, here's how you set it up, and here's the settings you should use. And, and that doesn't teach people the why. It teaches people how, but it doesn't teach them why.
And why is everything.
Yeah.
I was just helping someone that was trying to mix, and they said, oh man, this EQ and compression, it's so hard to get. And I said, well, what did you do when you started your mix? He goes, well, I pulled everything up and I soloed the kick and I started EQing it. And I said, why? And he goes, well, because I needed to EQ it. I said, well, why? What did you not like about that kick drum that you felt the need to solo that first and EQ it? And he goes, well, I don't know. You got to EQ the kick. I said, that's a terrible reason to do anything to a source.
That's right.
Turn every one of your plugins off, pull the faders up, get a rough mix of what you have. Levels will be a little all over, fine. No big deal. Pan things. Then start to identify what you don't like about something, but voice it to yourself. Like, talk to yourself in a mirror. Okay, the drums aren't doing something. Why is it? They feel like dull or something. I don't hear enough of the air or something. Okay, well, what could that be? Let's maybe look at the overheads. Are they loud enough, first off? Okay, you've decided they're loud enough. Great, we need to pull some air out of it. Let's look at some top-end EQ. Not mid-range, not high-mid. Let's go way above that and pull some air out and see what that does. Okay, good, you got that. What's next? Well, the bass guitar seems a little, it's fighting the kick. Well, who is it? Is it the bass or the kick? Decide which one you like better before you put anything on it. And he's looking at me going, okay, this makes sense, and I can't believe I didn't think of this.
Right.
Like, sit and think of what you need first, and then figure out. Then if you don't know what to do, then you know what to research on what to do. But so many people just pull everything up and they're going, oh, they got a plug in here and a plug in there. Well, I just bought the Waves Gold Edition Mercury bundle all in whatever, and I got to use them all so that everything is up there. And whoa, step back a second. Identify first. Listen and try to learn what you're listening to.
That's right.
Go from there.
Yeah, I call it mixing or processing with a purpose. And so in my mixing membership website, I teach we have those kinds of examples in every month's mix. And I'll say, I did think we did last month. I'll say to them, for example, you should be asking yourself every single time you're going to put a plugin on, if it's a snare drum, I'm going to EQ this snare because ... And I said, and if you can't answer the ... then don't put the EQ on the snare. Just because you have the processors doesn't mean you need to use them all the time.
Right.
Half the gear in the racks, and I'm sure this happens with you, they don't get used on every mix. We use about half of what's in those racks on the mixes, typically. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Sometimes we don't compress at all or whatever. You know,
right.
I mean, it all, you have to know why. And that's the thing. There's too much information out there when no one teaches the why. And I think the reason why a lot of people don't teach the why is because a lot of people don't know the why. And so the people that really know the why, they're not on YouTube teaching it. You know what I mean? They're making money and they're running, you know, but the guys that you know, but the people that you know, why am I doing this? And what am I listening for? And I'm huge. I really, that's the biggest thing I try to teach is because the tool is just a tool. But if you don't know how to effectively use the tool, it doesn't matter whether you have a bunch of plugins or a bunch of gear. It doesn't matter. And when you get into hybrid and analog, you have to be even a better engineer, I feel, to get good mixes out of that stuff, because you really got to understand the gear, how the work, the gain staging. You really got to understand it. You know, there's no preset over there. You can't just pick a preset like you can on a plugin. And so, yes,
I think
it's
presets,
faster.
I think, are one of the ways people get into trouble really fast.
Yeah, it's faster, and you could say it's easier when you know what you're doing. Then it becomes faster. But just having gear and hardware in and of itself doesn't make you a better engineer. They're not magic boxes. People call them that, but they're not. If you don't know how to use them, it's just like with third-party plugins. I've been teaching this for years. If you can't get a good mix with stock plugins, don't buy a single third-party plugin, especially the ones that emulate the old gear, because those plugins react differently than a stock plugin does in most cases. And if you don't understand the way that gear that they're trying to emulate works and the way that plugin is designed, your mix will sound worse, not better. And then you buy all these plugins, and I get this all the time. I do Zoom consulting sessions every day of the week. I got all this stuff. I saw you using the Slate digital bundle. I went out and bought it. My mix doesn't sound like yours. I said, but do you know how to use those plugins, or did you just slap them on your mix and you thought, well, Steven Slate said they were going to sound great. And they do sound great if you know how to use them and you understand a lot of this stuff. And like I said, that whole concept works double when you go to analog.
Yeah.
You really have to understand it, or you're just wasting your money. And a lot of it's because if you don't have the basic foundation already set and the basic skills, then you know you're putting the cart way before the horse.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying, or it should anyway.
Oh, your audio really cut out on me now, Charlie.
Are we?
Yeah, it sounds like you're swimming underwater. To me, it does.
What is going on?
Maybe it's my Zoom connection. I don't know.
Because we hear you great. We hear you great. So it's maybe just.
Hold on a sec.
Yeah, because on YouTube, it's everybody says the audio is fine, but it's probably the Zoom thing.
Yeah, while I'm trying this, I'm gonna talk though.
You guys sound like R2D2 to me.
Oh man, I wish I'd make a lot of money if I could be R2D2. Give me zoom. So I don't know if you can understand me at all, David, but why I'm trying to do a quick fix here. I'm gonna talk. I think it goes without saying, whether you buy hardware, a plugin, an interface, any piece of gear, you have to take the time to learn how to use it. It just you're right. There is no magic box, and that stuff. Everything, a plugin, a hardware unit, these things get sold as this magic, hack. I hate that word, hack. I know hacks. Yeah. Your techniques you learn, but you have to learn how to use this stuff.
You want me to try hanging up and calling back in on that link? Would that help?
Yeah. You want to see if you want to rejoin?
Yeah.
Hold on one second.
Okay. Yeah, because I can't hear you. So signal it to me.
Smoke signals. Carrier pigeon. You got any questions you can talk about right now while I do this?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I wanted to talk about, which is something that David mentions in some of his videos, is how so many people get lost in the details.
Oh, there it is. That's better. What happened?
I just reset what was sending to you.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that sounds beautiful now.
So David, what I want to mention, because that's one thing we talked about before, is you did that great comparison between two interfaces, right? There are in different price points, and you put up two mixes, just running everything the same. We're not gonna name the brand so people don't get pissed off, or
then go watch the videos. Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Go watch his videos.
Yeah, go watch the video. But so that placebo doesn't kick in. But what I want to say is is so you made everything like normalized, everything, the sound is the same pretty much, level, blah, 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 and then you start comparing. Then they did, your buddy David did the comparison in nulling the digital files, right? So it went down to like minus 60 dB. That's noise floor. It's like, and then people obviously in comments say, oh yeah, your second mix, the snare, when it kicks in, it's just brighter. And this and that. It's like, dude, it nulls digitally. So scientifically, it's proven that there is no difference. So basically, we hear what we want to hear.
It's exactly right.
Careful,
and that's mixing with your eye. That's listening with your eyes, not your ears again. And so that's exactly what we did. I did that test and I sent it to Dave, and he told me, don't tell me which one is which. Nobody knew for weeks which one was which. And he did the test as you said, and we were shocked. I was shocked that I couldn't hear the difference. And then as I'm reading through the comments and people are saying, oh, I can hear the difference on my iPhone. I hear that the snare is brighter. And I'm like, and I think I said in one of the videos, I said, anybody that would make that kind of comment, that's complete and utter nonsense. And I said, that kind of statement right there is the problem with most YouTube videos that try to educate in this space, is because people say they don't know what they're talking about. And if you don't know what you're talking about, that's fine. You want to learn. We all didn't know what we were talking about at one point or another in our career. But I said, but at least don't clutter. You don't clutter the conversation with those kinds of ridiculous comments, because there's people out there that are really trying to understand, and you're trying to make it sound like, well, you guys are foolish because you can't hear the difference and you must not have good ears and all that other stuff. And that's just all nonsense. And we proved it with that test that it nulls all the way down to minus 60 dB. And there is no difference between those two audio files. Now, again, the only differences that there may have been, I think Dave might have said this, and he I guess technically he would be right, would be we printed it, the print track twice, right? So we ran it through the first time, printed it, and then hooked up another interface and ran it and printed it again. So now you're running through the console twice. Every time it runs through, there might be a little sonic difference that might happen. The console's is warmer now than it was a half an hour ago. So there could be what I would indiscernible, real subtle differences. It can't be an identical print. It's not digital. It's not a carbon copy. It's running through the gear twice. But we couldn't hear the difference. And to this day, people on that video will comment and say they knew which one was which. And nobody really knew.
Have to listen that hard to hear a difference, I mean, literally have to focus with all your freaking might to hear a difference. The difference doesn't matter.
Right. And it could just be, I listened to it today. My ears were a little more compressed than they were yesterday. I listened to it a little louder, and I've been listening to loud music for 3 hours prior. Well, guess what? Your eardrums now have compressed a little bit. And when you're listening to that example, it's going to sound a little different to you. That's why Dave put it on an analyzer, because we wanted to show people that the perception is what's really going on there. It's not really what's happening technically, because those curves were identical. I mean, it couldn't have been any closer.
Oh yeah.
So, I
know. Yeah. I have this discussion with people constantly say, oh yeah, Pro Tools sounds different than Logic. And we're like, dude, it's zeros and ones. They all sound the same. What changes is the interface you use, because there's an analog path in there, and then what you sending it to the speakers. That's the difference. But the zeros and ones are all the same.
People to this day at Home Recording Made Easy will swear to me that their DAW sounds better than everything else's. And I go, I use them all. I have them all. They all sound exactly the same. It's just workflow. That's the only difference between them. And again, and those are usually, again, it's usually a small percentage of people. The majority of people get it, but that small percentage of people, they don't, again, if you think it's the DAW that's your problem, again, stop blaming everything else around you, and you got to take some say, hey, look, maybe my skills are not up to snuff. And so that's the other thing that I do at mixingmadeeasy.net. Every month, pretty much, I use a different DAW, and then I'll use a different set of plugins. Every single month. It's never the same twice in a row. And the reason why I do that is because I want to show, because a lot of my students are new at the craft. They're new. They don't know. And again, I'm here to, it's not their fault they don't know. I didn't know at one time. You didn't know at one time. But I try to show them that it doesn't matter what DAW. I can use a DAW that I haven't used in a year, and they watch me just like I'm mixing music analog, fumble around. I can't figure out how to add I fumble through it live, so they can see that it doesn't matter. The mix will always sound good at the end. I don't care what tools you give me. Now you can say, well, if you use this set of tools, it may sound a little different than the other set of tools, but it's never going to sound bad if you know what you're doing. And so the DAW doesn't matter, the plugins don't matter, and I'll even go as far to say, in like you were just saying with your $40 reverbs on the last line, the gear almost doesn't really matter. It's, it's how you use it. I mean, there's some bad gear out there certainly, but today most gear, you could put something through your little those quadriverbs or those Elises, those $50 boxes.
I love my quadriverbs.
There's nothing wrong with those. My reverb, we have our reverbs. We have cheap reverb. I have cheap delays. I have old Line 6 delay units. They're $400 units. They're not. Yeah. I don't have a Bricasti in my rack. I don't.
It's all colors to me. You know. I mean, I've been watching the comments a little bit, seeing some of the gear that people have been popping up, the ART and. One was a Golden Age. I've got a couple ART things I love. I've got some Golden Age gear that I love because it does something cool, Yeah. They're just flavors.
They're just difference of color on the canvases. There is, and I always say if you buy decent name brand quality stuff, you're going to be okay most times. Don't blame the gear, blame you. I say it all the time. Yeah. Don't blame the gear, blame you.
I mean, I like to blame the gear when I make a mistake.
I know, and if that discussion about this DAW sounds different than that one, I don't know how, but it does. It's like, okay, just do a null test, just bounce the same file, and then just compare them, put them out of phase, and then if they know, then it's all the same.
It's all just perception in your eyes.
With absolutely nothing on it. It has to be the same going in and the same coming out, though.
Exactly.
You can't use any of the things that come with the DAW.
No, just raw audio, and it should null out, and it will. I mean, it will. It will. I mean, so it's people that do that, and we get those, and we have to. Sometimes I got to delete those comments because if they don't add to the conversation, they're going to confuse people. I just delete them because I want to try to keep the information solid so people can learn, so they're not going down the wrong path and listen to some dummy telling them something that's completely not true. And if I don't know what I'm talking about, we say it. We say, well, I don't know, I'm not really sure. This is what I think right now. If my opinion changes in 3 weeks, I'll get back on here and tell you how my opinion changed and why.
Oh, man, there's so many of my early videos that I probably need to turn off now because I've learned so much since then.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some people on here using quad reverbs, and John Wells got the old microverb. So I'm going to start an Elises reverb club.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, man. They're great units.
If it works, I mean, Jesus, who cares?
Nobody cares.
Yeah. I mean, we still rave about stuff that has been done 50 years ago with like 4 tracks and whatnot, Right. So,
we were just talking about that yesterday with a friend of ours from Cherokee Studios, who's a great engineer and tech, and we were talking about early Neve and API and all the way all that stuff was built was whatever was available that week in parts for them to put this stuff together is what built the board. Same with the early Tridents, the A ranges. And all of that stuff, it wasn't what it is now. So some of these things that we think are great were built with literally whatever was there at the store that day. Oh, I need that capacitor, that resistor will work. Oh, well, okay, fine, just give me that. Let's go. I got to build this thing.
Yeah,
it sounds cool.
Of course.
It was just to fix a problem at the time. They needed something that was going to work, and they said we weren't trying to create some legendary sonic sound. It was like, we need to get the audio from here to here. What do we got laying around that makes that happen?
Yes.
Some of it's a mistake. Some of it was just a mistake or a design mistake.
Or literally it came down to what was available in parts. Yeah. That's our early Neves and the Tridents. That was, what do we have here that we can put this stuff together? There was no sitting and going, well, let's pick one of the 85 different input transformers that we can choose from now, because none of that existed.
There was one transformer, laying in the bottom of a toolbox somewhere, and that was a transformer that they used.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, there's still questions about patch space, so we'll deal with that.
I just saw that.
Yeah,
Miggy, there are a lot. There are, man, this whole English thing from Kansas. English not my first language. There's a live stream that we did now probably 4 or 5 years ago where we did the patch bay thing, and there's another non-live stream I did about an earlier version of our setup that I go through some of that. But that is, I'm pointing at Ernesto's computer because that's what I'm reading, not the one in front of me. That is something that we are working on, a huge live stream where we're going to set a bunch of stuff up in the live room to where we can actually demo that, all of that stuff. And one person, this is what I love about old videos too, there's someone commented that because we only had one camera in the early days of our live streams, that I was afraid to have another angle because I didn't want to give away my I had no tricks hooking up a patch bay. But no, that wasn't it. But now that is in the works, hopefully this summer. We're going to try to make this big and all-encompassing. Our friend Scott Francisco is going to join us, and it's going to be huge. Meantime, any of these console side chats, you got a question, ask it. We'll try to answer as best we can.
Yeah, patch base can be complicated, especially based on how many patch points you want to create, you know?
Yeah.
So, say input, output, but then say, yeah, but I want to have a monitor out, and then I want to have an insert, but then I want to have a line output, but then I want to have, it's like, okay, then you're talking about 7 patch points now.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
we
We
start-
have nine TT patch bays here.
yeah.
Yeah, we started with we didn't buy one the first time around. We started with one. We said, we bought a 96 point. Said, well, I'll never need more than 96 points. 3 months later, we got 4 patch bays. You know, it's just, you don't know. Again, you don't know. I go, we plug in. We didn't even think to buy a patch bay. I mean, it sounds stupid. I mean, it's almost embarrassing now, but it was like, we went, we just need to get audio from the DAW to the console and back in. Yeah, we don't need a patch bay. What do you need that for? We're going to put a couple of bus compressors on. We'll do everything else in the box. And then we figured it out. And then we said, well, you mean we need 4 more D sub cables? And, again, we only bought 4 when we started. And then, within 3 months, we had 40 or 43 or whatever the number we landed on. It was crazy, but it's 400 pounds worth of D sub cables behind our console now.
Oh my God. I wish I would have kept track of that, what's behind here too. It's amazing. That was the one thing when we were building this particular studio. I had a handful of cables from the old one. No console went in the beginning. There was no console here. It was all just the outboard gear.
Mm-hmm.
But we had to wire in the ISO booth, in the live room. There's patch panels everywhere. And I went and bought a few snakes. We're building it, so I bought bulk cable, thinking, I got plenty. And then you start laying it out, and I go, oh, crap, well, that one I bought didn't even reach the live room.
Yeah.
So that one's not going to work there. Well, that can go to another piece of gear. And all of a sudden start adding it up and went, oh, crap. This is going to cost thousands of dollars in cabling.
It was the one thing that we underestimated the big time. Yeah, I didn't realize. We were the one thing that the biggest mistake we made was not planning enough cables and not understanding the cost of them either. And then not buying the right lengths. We didn't make ours like you did. We bought pre-cut, lengths. And we bought mostly, 10 and 15 footers. And all we had to do was move the rack 3 feet away from the console. Now 80% of the cables weren't long enough. So we had to go out and buy. And then, then I said, well, I'm buying them this time. I'm buying 20 and 25 footers because if I ever move this thing again, I'm not rebuying these cables. And then we, went through the whole quality of cables. And we made a mess. I got a whole room full of cheap D sub cables. If anybody wants them, I could probably wire a whole nother studio with all the extra cables I have.
Yeah, see, there's no D sub here. So I didn't have, if I had to do D sub, I probably wouldn't build them because I'm not going to sit and deal with that. I probably would have gone through the buying them. But since I have none here, we just bought tons of bulk cable.
Yeah.
And made everything that way. And that made it easier to make. I wouldn't.
Yeah, because you could cut them to the length that you need. Yeah, we didn't have that luxury. We bought them and then had to rebuy them, and it was a nightmare.
I didn't do that until all this got redone in January and in March. Well, actually, March was the big one. We had 3 patch bays that you picked up from Westlake, right? That these were great. Bittree already had 24 Paramogami pinned on one side with Elcos, XLR cordage, whatever it was on the other side, but they're like 50 feet long.
Oh, yeah.
They were going a total of about 15 feet. So this shit's just wrapped up everywhere in the back. So in March, when the new racks got built, I'm like, that's changing. Everything, almost everything, got cut to length. And I ended up with all this extra snake cable. I didn't need to buy any new cable. I had to repin it all, do a little bit of soldering. But finally, instead of having just like literally like this tall, you're walking over this cabling in the back of the console, just sitting there.
Yeah.
All neatly cut to length.
Yeah, that's nice. That's great. I wish we could have. I didn't make my cables. That's a great way to do it if you know how to do it, for sure. And it's probably cheaper, right? Because you buy it in bulk, so it's probably a little less expensive in the long run.
Way. And there's a place out here in the valley called is it Apex?
Yeah,
not Aphex the gear, Apex. And it's like it's an electronic junk store, basically. But a lot of the studios, movie studios, recording studios, when they get done with gear, they sell it all to Apex. And you can go out there, and we would find bulk Belden and bulk Megami.
Oh,
and
wow.
sometimes it would be pinned. Sometimes it already had Neutrik ends on it. And you buy it by the pound. So
okay.
I could buy a $300 snake for about 35 or 40 bucks.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So I would do weekly trips, like twice a week, go out in the morning and see if they had anything new come in, and I would just stock it. I would just buy it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You never have right. You'll always down the road. You'll always need another cable for something.
Yep.
Always. You know.
Piles of it.
So yeah,
I know.
cable. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Sorry, when we had to buy BNC cable, right, because of the long runs of the video cameras.
Oh yeah. Yep.
You know, one BNC cable is $150 just for one.
That's
and then we
right.
went to Apex and was like, well, we'll give you 3 for 20.
Yeah.
You know.
And we found a snake that was long enough that was a 5-channel BNC snake, really nice one, and that was like 35 or 40 bucks.
I know.
It's a $350 snake.
I know.
Wow.
So
That's great.
you find your little spots where you can do that.
Yeah.
I guess in a bigger city you have that option sometimes, but
Yeah.
that saved me a lot of money.
I bet. Yeah, I don't have any place like that around here. I gotta buy everything.
So what? We missing anything?
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody's just talking about consoles are great, but it's just so complicated. And then some people were talking about tape, and it's like, well, we're starting to deal with tape.
Yeah, we got the 8-track working now finally, so there's gonna be a lot of 8-track stuff.
So
coming.
that's another rabbit hole, So
sounds so good.
Yeah.
So good. But the console doesn't. The thing with most consoles. Okay, I'm gonna leave some of the Neve, like the Flying Faders, the V-Series and stuff, out of this, because those are you have to have a bit of a degree to get past audio through those. But a lot of them aren't that complicated at first just to get stuff happening. I know the Trident is not, and I'm pretty sure the Origin isn't. I've worked on a Duality, and it wasn't too bad.
Yep. No, it's pretty straightforward.
What was the other API that was it? MI?
Yeah.
I can't remember what
MCI?
series that is.
Yeah.
No, it was an API.
No.
I can't remember. But once you know one channel, you
Right.
know 90% of the console.
Yeah, it looks intimidating at first. Sure, it does. But I was surprised again how quickly when I got on my Origin, within 2 mixes, I was like, this is really simple, and it is pretty logical. Yeah, but like he says, a lot of knobs and a lot of buttons, so it could look intimidating, but it really isn't. It is pretty straightforward.
The hardest part is getting it hooked up to allow you to take advantage of all the things on the console.
Right, and again, if you don't know, or if there's no information, well, what is the console really capable of? I mean, I kind of knew, but again, I really didn't know. I mean, I talked to some people at SSL, but those engineers are brilliant engineers, but they're horrible teachers as far as they dump you with so much information. It's like, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about, and and I didn't have the console. It wasn't here yet. So part of that learning experience, as we talked earlier, was, well, as we sat down and we started, we don't need any patch bays. Once you sit down in front of it and go, oh, wait a minute, this button here will allow me to put an insert on every one of these channels. Ooh, wouldn't that be cool? And then you start going, well, what do I need to do that? Well, I need a patch bay. I need at least 4 D sub cables, because I got to have sends and returns.
Yep.
And then you start to piece it together, and then you go, oh, okay, now what? Oh, you can actually put stuff on the actual group channels too, and you start to figure it all out as you go. And
you
that's
bring
how
your
we did it.
aux in there, and all of a sudden,
we were using all originally all of our delays and reverbs with plugins, and that was fine. There was nothing wrong with that. But then I discovered, wait a minute, we got 6 auxes on each one of these channels. Couldn't we hook up reverbs and then we had a master section with master stereo aux. I'm like, couldn't we hook up reverbs and delays to that? And we started, what do we need? We need, everything was 4 cables. You need 4 cables for everything. And then let's get the unit, let's hook it up, let's try it. And you just start, some of not knowing, again, like you said, if you don't know and you do it yourself and you learn as you go, it takes a lot longer to get up and running, but you learn so much, and then you really understand your setup, which is the most important thing. And then when you try to teach people, you really got to understand what you're talking about. So a lot of this too was, as I'm trying to make a video, I'm like, oh, okay, I got to make sure I understand that, because I'm talking through it and I don't even think I got it in my mind correctly. And it forces you to go really learn what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's
I've left a lot of videos on the editing floor because I wasn't sure what I was saying was right, and I had to put it off and go, I got to make sure I'm saying this and doing this correctly before I go trying to show this to somebody.
Right.
Here's a cool question. Do you think owning a console raised your amount of business? Like, people were like, oh, you're legit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It helped.
Yeah.
Did it help you?
Yeah, well, it was funny because when I first bought the console, everyone told me that I was crazy and that studios are going out of business and no one is going to pay you to do blah, blah, all that stuff. And I said, well, when I bought the console, oddly enough, I didn't buy it. I was like, I don't care if I don't make money the first 2 years. I didn't buy it to make money. I bought it. I already have like I said, I already have all the brands and stuff. I make my money somewhere else. This was a passion project for me, and I didn't care if I made $1. I wanted to learn and experience and then teach people. And I said, and if a byproduct of that was people were going to hire me to mix their stuff, great. I didn't even have the console installed yet, and people were asking me to mix their stuff because they heard stuff that I did in the box, and I've been mixing for years. So they heard that stuff, and they said, oh, I want them to mix. So yes, the answer to your question is it's been nonstop. Because people, they want their stuff mixed through equipment that they don't have themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it has helped a lot. I could do a lot more work if I want to, but I try to be very selective about what work I do because I'm not just a mixing. My business isn't made on just mixing. As a matter of fact, it's one of those things lower on my income chain. I only pick the projects that I really like and if I really want to do. I don't just take money from anybody to mix their stuff. It's not the way I built this business because if I did that, as you guys know, the amount of upfront cost, if I was worried about the fast payback, it becomes an enormous amount of pressure on me. So now I got to make money. And as we said off camera earlier, then you start doing things to make money that you really don't want to do just to pay the bill.
Running a studio like yours or buying lots of outboard and analog gear is not a short game.
No.
It is a long game, and you have to be prepared for that.
Right.
Because it has made a difference for us here having the console.
I've been lucky
that I've had a relationship with Trident for a while, so I got to do the beta testing for the new console. So like 2/3 of my console is the prototype.
Oh, nice.
And it's been great. So I had that, which I loved because I grew up recording. I recorded on Tridents all the time, like over at Sound City and Sound Image. They had one room that had an 80B in there. And I'm like, oh my God, I get to actually have a Trident here. Cool. But it instantly changed when people would walk in because there is that factor if they see it. Even though it's going to sound good, you see it. And there's a placebo effect.
Absolutely. Especially if you're recording, like artists come in and record, there is a level of, it's impressive. Mm-hmm. It's impressive. And so they walk in and you feel like now, and again, it's the same thing, even though I don't have clients here, but even for me personally, when I walk in the room and I'm going to sit in front of that stuff and work, even if it's not for a client, even if it's just doing a YouTube video or mixing something for my website as a part of my portfolio, whatever, it's inspiring. It puts you in a different headspace, which was different than when I was just kind of sitting in front of the computer and mouse and everything and fingering every fader one at a time. It doesn't have that same thing. And so for our client, it's even different, right? It's like you're going to a professional place now, and you feel like, wow, you know, this is like the big leagues. And it is. You know, and it is, and there's something to be said for that. And then in the end, it's all about, are you having fun or not? And if you're not having fun, and I don't think of this stuff as a job to me, it's a job. Yes, I make money at it. It's where I make my living, but it's always got to be fun factor first. Like I said, you know, if I would never, the amount of, you know what it is, the amount of, I've only had this stuff about a year and a half, the amount of upfront money I had to spend, that it's going to take me at least a few years to break even, to just break even. And that's okay. I don't care. If I would have thought about that, if that would have been the deciding factor, I never would have done it. It would have been, because nobody in there, you know, people say, you crazy, all that money, you know, and I understand. I get it, but it's fun. And there's it. And
this has to be fun, because if it's not fun, there's way better ways to just simply make money.
Absolutely.
So this job, I can't tell you how much I agree with that statement.
Yeah, there has to be a certain, you know, even when I started Home Recording Made Easy many years ago, I did it as for fun. It wasn't a job. It was a part-time hobby. I worked a real job for many years, and then it grew into a full-time career. But it always started with fun, and it was like, if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, I don't want to do it, because like you said, I could go make a lot more money doing something else that I hate. You know, so I just think I went about this whole thing, especially with the hybrid and the console, from a way different angle than most people. And I think that's why most people didn't understand it. And that's why I got a lot of some of the backlash I got, because they thought from an investment point of view, it's one of the stupidest things you could have done, you know, especially today with inflation and, you know, all the crazy stuff. It's like, you went and spent how much money? It's like, well, I didn't just take it out of my pocket. I got a business loan. I'm a business, you know, I'm making payments, but it's not about that for me. I don't think about it in financial terms. I think about it in having fun, teaching people, and learning, because I love to learn. And so that, and then that'll make me want to work harder at it. And the more I work at it, the more videos we make and all that, that turns into business. I mean, the only reason I just got through mixing an entire record for a band that the record's not out, so I really can't talk about the band other than to say there's players on that record from Alice Cooper and from Supertramp, and, you know, Oliver Wakeman from Yes, and there's big names on this record. And I was so fortunate and blessed to mix the whole project for them. You know how they found me? They found me on YouTube making videos, and they saw my passion in this stuff, and they listened to some of my mixes and said, I want, you know. But I didn't get into this for that. I got into this to have fun. And then what's happening is the business starts to come after the fact. So I always tell people, try to do this because you love it first. And then if you work hard and you educate yourself and you're willing to put the time in, you can make money at this if you want to.
Yeah. But you have to be willing to stick with it for a while. Mm-hmm. You know, none of this, I don't know how it was for you, but I know for myself, none of it happened overnight. Like, I went from, how big was that studio we had in Hollywood? Like, not even as big as this control room. And it got work that outpaced that room. But as soon as this one went in, it was all of a sudden, it's more money, it's more room, we need more stuff in it, and I need to now have way more clients than I had to start with.
Right.
And I knew that wasn't going to come by tomorrow.
No.
So I just had to start figuring a way. I started trying to network. You do things for a little less money just to kind of get things out there. You try to be picky, because just doing anything, if it's not good, it can have the exact opposite effect.
Absolutely correct.
So sometimes you need that. I needed that rent money. I'm like, I still got to say no to that project because it's just not on par. That is going to do more harm to my business than the money that I'm going to make for that one project to meet rent. So it's like, okay, well,
yeah.
What am I selling right now?
No doubt. Even when I first started, I still turn away about 25% of the work that's offered to me in different ways. And people do what are you, crazy? You have that much business? I said, no, it's not that I have that much business. It's not how many clients I have. It's the quality of clients that I have. And you know, and that makes a big difference when you're in it for the long run. And the reason why most people, you know, they don't last more than a couple of years is because they don't have the stamina to go on for the long run. They need that instant gratification, because we live in a world today where everything is instant. I just dropped the video the other day, and well, I would have left the comment if he didn't, curse at me 3 times in the comments. So I had to delete it. But he said he was saying something to the effect of, what was it? I put the video down. Oh, he was just saying, everything was just too long and the videos were too long and it took you 15 minutes to get to the point. We could have done this in 5 minutes. And I said, look, man, if you're not willing to sit through a 15-minute video to learn something, then you're in the wrong. You're not. Take up something else, because you'll never get good at this if you really want to get good at the craft. We live in a world where everybody wants to learn everything in a 4-minute YouTube video. I can't teach in 4 minutes anything, and people don't have patience anymore. And it's the same thing with business. They don't have the patience to start and, like you said, turn away stuff or start when nobody's calling you and you're just working and practicing and honing your skills. So when that opportunity comes, you're ready.
When we started live streaming in the very, very beginning, would have been 2015, 16, something like that, which feels like way longer ago than it really was.
Yeah.
I remember the first couple months, there were 1 or 2 people watching. Those people were our 2 assistants sitting in the front room, checking it on a phone and an iPad to make sure the audio was good. And that was it.
Yeah.
And then I would set them to off and I would edit out, we didn't have the flow down or whatever. So I would edit out the dead space and put it back up. We do one the following week. 2 people, How and Tao, sitting in the front. Oh yeah, sounds good. Great. Glad you guys enjoy it. And we just kept doing it because I knew if we're getting at least good enough to make something sound good and show something, if you do it and you do it and you do it and you do it, eventually there were 5 people. So now we actually have 3 people that aren't in the building watching it.
Right.
And then there was 10, and then there was 20, and then it got to be very consistent, 30 to 60 people every time, and a few would be well over 100. And you just kept doing it, and you had to work through the parts that are very humbling.
Yeah, and that's where most people give up. And that's, that's where most people won't be successful at it because they're not willing. They want it now. And that's just our society. Everything is now. I want the information now, and it can't, there's all kinds of analytics on how long people will watch your stuff and all that stuff. And I don't know. Maybe I'm just too old. I can't get in that headspace. I don't know. And you have to work through it. It took me 7 or 8 years of running Home Recording Made Easy as a part-time side hustle before it was a full-time job. Almost 7 years. And now I've been doing this whole thing, I don't know, 12, 15 years, whatever it is. But it took a long time. But I think you said something earlier, kind of goes to this point, which is everyone just sees the finished result. They see where you are now. They see where you guys are now, but they didn't see all the years behind you where everything that didn't work and all the ideas that didn't work and only the 2 people watching the live stream and all of that. They didn't see all that hard work. They just see, oh, look, they got this thing. They must have got lucky. They just struck lucky. And all of a sudden people started watching. No, it's a journey. It really, truly is. And that's where it comes right back to the fun factor. If you don't love doing this, if you don't love this thing, then you won't stick around long enough to find the success. You just won't.
Right.
And
you have to network too. That's I had a period of time where business was really slow. And I mean, how many times did we talk? I'm sitting there, it's getting close to the end of the month, and I'm pulling my hair out trying to figure it out. Why can't I get more in here? Last month, there'd be 1 month it was all great, and then the next month it was famine. Yeah. And that I had no consistency. The quality of some things was off, of the music coming in. And, at any one of those points, I could have just called it quits and gone and sold insurance or something. But I don't know what, I'd be terrible at selling insurance. So, I started trying to network. I started using Instagram, which is one of the other places where I do get business from. And I would search in my local area and find artists that whether it was a live thing they put up of them playing, sometimes it was just in the bedroom, and I go, holy crap, I really like that. So I would just reach out. Hey, I'm so-and-so, I've got a studio, I really enjoyed your music. I watched blah blah video, because I'd go watch a bunch of them. And I said, I'd love to work with you. If you're ever in need of a studio, please hit me up. If I'm not on the radar, best of luck with your career because I dig what you're doing. That turned into work over time that then led to new people.
Yeah.
But it took a little while. And I kind of figured out, how to approach people in a short, way that didn't seem creepy or didn't
Right.
just get deleted, that sort of thing. And that was a way I kind of dug myself out a little bit of that. And then sticking with the YouTube thing has helped considerably. Like, you know exactly what you just said about how you got found for that one big mix is they found you there and they see the passion, they see what you've done. All those years of hard work have gone into getting you to that point.
Absolutely.
It's same with bands. There's no such thing as an overnight sensation.
No, not usually. Those are one in a million. It's usually the people that'll put the miles in, or that will, like you said, will humble themselves and say, I'm gonna reach out to somebody. I'm gonna network, and I'm gonna try to, that's how it's done, and it takes time. And if you're good at what you do, and you don't even have to be the best at what you do, you just have to be good enough. I mean, you have to be. I'm not the greatest engineer in the world. I'm not even close. Well, you want to know what? I'm good enough for a lot of people. And so that's all that matters. And so in every day, like you said, I mean, you watch some of those old videos, you go, oh my God, what was I thinking? Well, it's the same thing when I listen to some of my productions or some of my mixes. Oh, yeah. I go, oh my God, I can't believe I let that out of the studio. And and I'm always saying what I'm doing today. Okay, I mixed a really big record. Great. But I got a lot more to learn. And I'm always, I don't, it's a project, whatever, but you know what? I want to get better. I want to be better. Yeah. You never stop learning. And I just think to me, it's more about the attitude and where your head's at than it is about even sometimes your skills,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a lot of getting clients and working with them is, yeah, you have to have the skills to do the job they want. But if the personalities don't match,
that's right.
It doesn't matter what your skills are. You could be the best mixer in the world, and if you're a dick and someone doesn't like you, they're not gonna fucking hire you.
That's
you're gonna
true.
I do that with musicians all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah. You deal with musicians all the time, coming in and out of there, right? So you understand how to manage those things. I tell students a lot because I have maybe 10 or 20% of my students want to be able to get to the point where they're mixing for clients, or they're starting to mix for clients, or get their first few jobs, and they're working for real low amounts of money, but you're getting some experience. And a lot of the consulting that I do today, when we start talking about that, is how to deal with those clients. And, and don't take offense when the client says, I don't like this, or can you change that? Or I've had, people say, they want me to do this, that, and the other thing. And I'm not going to do that. I'm like, that's not the attitude you want to have with a client. I keep saying, remember whose name is on the record. It's not you. You're on the back of the record if you're lucky, in the fine print that you can't even see. That, so in the end, client management is just as important, or maybe even more so, than actually if you're good at skill, what your skills are. Because, once you get to a level that you're good, it becomes down to how do you click with someone, personality, are you easy to work with? It's not even about how much money you charge. I don't even think that even matters. I think it's about how is the experience for the client? How's the relationship? Right. Did they get what they want? Were you easy to work with? All of that stuff is what makes the difference. Not if, Charlie's mix is a little bit better than Dave's mix. It probably is, but that's not the difference between him getting hired and me getting hired necessarily. It's about all the other soft skills that go along with it. Mm-hmm. And I spend a lot of time teaching students that. And sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. They get offended, when client, they have too much ego, and they don't take constructive criticism well.
Yeah. And I had that same issue early in my career when someone asked you to change something to say they didn't like it. You take it personally. And that is a hard thing to get around, mentally at first, but once you do, everything gets easier.
Yeah.
You can still say no or give your opinion on something.
Right.
But once that ego doesn't get bruised every time I want something different, because we all hear things different. Even my clients that I work with, that I've worked with for years, still hear things differently than I do. So there's still sometimes you do this a little bit and then you come to an end result and everybody's like, woohoo.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of that too is just how you pick, like you said earlier, how you pick your projects and how you pick the clients you work with. And, I have a whole process where I could feel somebody out pretty quickly, whether, that's why I say I turn away about 25% of the work, because, some of that is not because of money or anything. It's because the vibe's not right. And I can start to see this is going to be a difficult one to deal with. And so, I try to stay away from those as much as I possibly can and just try to work with cool people. But in the end, the artist is right, and I could steer him in the right direction, and we can, I'm always, they've always been welcome to share my opinion. And if I think something is wrong, and I said, look, I think you're going down the wrong path, I'll go down that road if you want. It's your art. It's not my art. I'm just here to try to make your art sound the best it can. But in the end, it's your record.
And that's something I think people need to keep in mind when you're listening to a mix. We talked about this a little yesterday.
Yeah.
Is if you hear a mix that you just kind of go, why would they do that? This is terrible, man. That mixing engineer sucks. You got to realize there's probably at least 3, 4, and if it's a label thing, 10 or 12 people behind there that are giving direction in one way or the other.
That's right.
Now there have been a few famous mixes that we know the mixing engineers.
Oh yeah.
Wrecked, but by and large,
of course, yeah.
You've got to keep in mind that it's, even if I'm producing, and a lot of what we do now is start to finish, the end result is still not 100% mine. And there's been times I've had to let something go out that just like, okay, I don't like that, but you do. It didn't ruin anything.
Right.
So, okay, that's, whatever. But there's always someone behind the mixing engineer saying, yes, no, yes, don't do that. I want this. Make it red, not it's too purple. I want it more blue.
That's right.
What are you talking about?
Right. Yeah. And it's usually the guy or gal paying the bill, and that's fine. That's totally fine. I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm not, my ego's is not big enough that I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to do that. It's like, I'll do whatever you want,
That's where the challenge comes in, I think. It's like, okay, here's what I'm being asked for. How do I get there and still not make it, especially if it's an idea that I don't think is a good one. How do I get them what they want, but not do that?
Well, yeah, that.
What other way can I get there?
Yeah, that's the years of experience, right? And that's the hundreds of clients you deal with over time, and you start to realize it becomes almost like a what is it? Like a psychologist, psychology. It really does. It's like you just want to give them what they want. They don't really make what they think they want, and what they really want sometimes are two different things, and they just don't know it yet.
Right.
And so that just comes with experience, and that just comes with, knowing how to tread those waters and know what to say and what not to say and what type of client is it. And, it's a whole thing. That's the one thing that it's hard to teach. You really have to go through it in order to learn it, because everybody's different. I could give someone pointers on how I would handle a specific situation, but if I'm not in the room and I don't see the look on their face when they're asking me for this thing, I don't necessarily know how we would proceed. And so some of that's just experience. And we've all screwed up and did stupid things and did things and said things we shouldn't have said and done. And, we've all done that. And then you learn, a lot of times is what you don't say. A lot of times, for me, I do a lot when I'm working with clients, I do a lot more listening than I do talking. I love to, we love to talk here, and I could talk about this stuff all day, but in a client situation, for me, there's a lot more listening than there is talking, and a lot of times it's just what I don't say and listening to how are they really asking me for that? They say they want blue, but they really want purple, and they just don't know that they want purple.
And that's sometimes learning the terminology of the client.
Yeah.
Because we all talk to each other in a certain way about sound, gear that makes sense. But there's a lot of my clients that come in that don't know that language whatsoever.
Yeah.
And some have been in the music business their entire lives.
Right.
But it's been on the other side of the glass. So now they're trying to convey to you what they want. And you're sitting there looking at it like, okay, I'm speaking, English and they're speaking Greek. Now I got to start figuring out, okay, that word means this. Oh, they're really saying that. And you start piecing together what they're saying. And sometimes that takes a little time. But it can go along, trying to do that, which it requires listening, goes a long way to making the whole experience of whatever you're doing a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is you guys are both musicians. I'm a musician, and when you're a musician first, we were musicians before we were engineers. At least I was. Most of us were. So
Same here.
You understand the musician lingo a little bit. I'm a guitar player by trade, but when I got into engineering, I could not play any instrument, but I can play drums now. I taught myself how to play piano. I'm not setting the world on fire, but when I first started learning how to just record instruments, the very first thing I did is went and bought a drum set. I've never sat behind a drum kit in my life, and I wanted to learn how to play. And I can play enough that I could sit in a room and we could play, you know, we're not playing Dream Theater music with me behind the drum kit, but if we want to play basic pop and rock, 4 on the floor, I can play it because I wanted to learn so I could talk to a drummer and understand how the instrument works to some degree. So I'm not walking in there and the drummer's talking to me in drummer speak and I'm looking at him like, what? You know?
Yeah.
Well, as being a musician, I think it's important. You know, you being a guitar players talk a certain way. You know, we use certain words when we're talking about guitar tone, and guitar players are the pickiest people in the world when it comes to tone. So you know what
more
those
so
words
than
are.
anybody.
Yeah, more so than anybody. But if you're a guitar player and you understand that stuff, I can relate to that. And so I think some of the best producers and engineers are guys and girls that could play, that are musicians, that played in bands, that understand it, so you can talk to them in that language, because a musician not necessarily is going to be able to talk to you in the engineering language. You know, they're not going to be able to talk to you about the inner workings of a compressor and how to make the snare sound fatter. They don't know. They think their snare, the final sound, is the way they sounded when they played it. They don't even have any idea that the way that sounded when it was recorded and the way it sounds now are completely different.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because I'm seeing some of the comments. Poor bass players are getting hammered right now.
I could play a little bit.
Bass players are some of my best friends, man.
I could play a little bass too. I'm a guitar player. What do they call that? The guitar player that plays bass. Like, he's really not a bass player, but he's a guitar player that can play a little bit of bass. That's about as much as I can play. I could get us through a song or two, but again, you're not gonna get anything really creative.
If you need another One Bites the Dust or Hell's Bells, I'm your guy. Anything beyond that, I'm not your guy.
Right. So I think that's really important when you're dealing with musicians and clients, is if you're a musician yourself, if you've recorded yourself like you guys do, you understand, you get it, you know what they're looking for.
Yeah, and it makes it easier to communicate.
Yeah,
and then
certainly.
I had friends, because I didn't come up doing any of this through the normal go work at a studio, be the assistant, be the runner, the assistant, all that stuff. I came up completely as a musician. Mm-hmm. But some of my good friends have been in that side of the business forever, and still answer the phone when I call to ask the one of many questions that I have asked over the years about how shit works.
Right.
And that has helped me a lot, actually. Having those couple people that really knew more than me, that were way smarter than me in it, that I could go, dude, I can't hear anything on this track right now. What am I doing wrong? Why does my fucking bass sound horrible? Well,
right.
You did this. You did that? Yep. Oh, that's where you went wrong. Oh.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah. Stop doing that. That makes it bad.
Right.
So, well, dude, holy crap.
It's like,
this has been
2 hours.
Fantastic, man.
Yeah, it's been a couple hours.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, even more, because we talked for about half an hour or more before entering sound check.
Yeah.
And I think, here's what I think. We need it's about time for my Chipotle. So, and Delilah's, well, she's asleep. She doesn't even know. But I would love to do this again in the future, because there's a few other topics that we could easily touch on that would take this another 2 hours.
Yeah, sure.
So I would love to do a follow-up on
Absolutely.
this sometime in the next couple months.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun. I really do appreciate it. And I dig what you guys do. And I love watching your videos, and I'm stealing a lot of your video ideas and going to try to put them into my production, and we'll see how that turns out. But
well, we've been watching all of yours. So, and judging from the comments that are going up here, there's a lot of people that know you. So,
that's great.
That's awesome. And those of you who don't, go watch his stuff, because there is a ton of great info. A ton of great info over there.
Yeah, especially if you like to hear that, I can hear the difference. It's like, go watch those videos, because there is none.
because we couldn't hear the difference on some of those things.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
But man, thank you. Really appreciate it. And let's do a follow-up, because some of the business side that you and I talked about in a previous phone call when we tried to do this a month ago.
Yeah.
When I screwed up the technical side of things. There are some things we didn't touch on now, and I would love to get to those things at some point.
Yeah, certainly. So. Any way I can help, I would love to come back and hang out. And then you guys got to come out onto my channel at one point, and we'll talk shop there too. Yeah. This is really cool. Yeah, excellent, for sure.
Let's do it. I'll do this any day of the week.
Yeah, for sure.
So thanks for joining us. everybody who joined us on the chat, which, I mean, I see Ernesto's been answering a lot of people, and I've been seeing I saw the more cowbell joke came up, so Christopher Walken made it in. That's awesome. But thank you to all of you who came out today. This has been a fun chat.
Oh, yeah.
We will have the next one scheduled. I'll work out a date in the next week, and we'll get that posted. So you all rock.
Yeah.
Thanks you.
Great
David,
questions, great comments.
Stay on the Zoom. I want to
Okay.
one thing post video. So
Yeah, sure.
all right, you guys. You all rock. I got to now look at this machine so I get to the right thing to cut out. Where is it? There it is. All right, everybody. Take care.
See ya.